saying that if you pay a credit card bill late twice, then credit card companies are justified to then increase the interest rate 10%. And then for 10%, you can be paying that for years and years and years.
Right. And they all talk to each other. The PS to that, right, is that even if you were late on one credit card bill,
all the others
for 2 months, they all talk to each other.
Yes.
So all of a sudden, the other cards also have the right to raise your rates too. So based on that one default, or two cases of default,
For me, the difference is...
You went and looked. After my class, you went and looked, and you saw that it had happened. Didn't you tell me that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And so you called and negotiated.
Well, I switched the... my goal is to pay that one off, and then switch to a credit card company that has 12.9% interest rather than 27.99% interest. But out of taking her class, I was in my power dealing with a credit card company. And I never even knew they did that before. We got out all these conversations. We didn't realize that, there weren't laws managing banks about certain fees, and there weren't laws managing credit cards about how much interest rate they can charge. I never realized that. So it was good to discuss that. But I feel that, and then the next step is a credit reporting agency would be.
Right. We have a whole nother show we're going to do on crediting.
There's a ripple effect. So just by taking responsibility to be conscious of how I manage money and paying my bills on time, I am looking for jobs that I would not have ever dreamed of in levels of responsibility and accountability. But because I'm doing all this rigorous work on my finances, I'm thinking, I could manage that company. So it's really changing the way I view myself and what I see as possible in my future, because I'm being responsible for my actions in the area of money.
I love that. I mean, it's one of the benefits that we talk about, but to hear it from you so personally and so in action is really great. There's a quote by, his name is T. Harv Eker. He wrote a book called Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. He says, how you do anything is how you do everything.
I like
so
that.
It happens a lot. My tagline for ownyourmoney.com is own your money, own your life. Because once you can be that empowered around your money, you can bring that level of responsibility and empowerment to everything. So it's fantastic. You talked about some of the benefits when you were telling us about how the experience has been for you in terms of a level of responsibility, empowerment, calm, ease. Are there any other benefits that the two of you would like to touch on?
Benefits of budgeting?
Yeah.
Yeah, just of being aware. It's amazing. I have a girlfriend who always talks about how she's always broke. I'm always broke, and there's never any money. And if I just make some more money, my life would just be so much better. And I was just explaining to her that she can detail her income. She knows how much she makes. She knows exactly when she gets paid. She knows exactly what that check will be. She knows when bonuses might become, But when I talk about, well, what do you owe? What are your expenses? Well, I have this one bill that I haven't paid in 3 months, and I don't remember how much I owe on that. And there's this other bill, it's the gas bill, but I have a little baby, so they can't turn off my gas yet because that's illegal. I mean, when you talk about her expenses, she's extremely vague. And when you're dealing with budgeting, what it does is it forces you to be very detailed about, what's going on with your expenses and your income, and you're just so much more aware of what's going on in your life. So it makes a big difference.
I totally agree. The other thing that you actually touched on, I'll just reiterate for our viewers, is that it also gives you a sense of what kind of income you need to be making to be covering your expenses. Because I find a lot of times people may be in a job that's not actually covering them, and that's part of what's contributing to this paycheck to paycheck challenge that we have.
That's a huge problem with college-age kids, because that's another thing, is that when we get out of college, we have a lot of people already having their ideas in their head about how much money they should be making. And they have these numbers, which could come from their friends or from their parents or just from an idea they have in their head. But most college kids have not added up their expenses. Well, how much is your student loans and your credit card debt and to live out on your own and the apartment and the utilities? They haven't done that math.
And they want to go out.
And they want to go out and have fun and go clubbing and all the other things they want to do, and eat out for lunch every day. And so, but then they say, well, I want to make $60,000 a year. I want to make $30 an hour, or whatever the number is. And I'll say, well, what are your expenses? And I actually have that was one of the...
Well, maybe we'll touch on that next.
Yeah, I'll say, well, what are your expenses? You've come up with your income, but you haven't added up your expenses. What we do is we look at the income first, and we do that in our culture all the time. That kind of goes right into the slide. We ask people, well, what do you make? what do you make? And people say, oh, I make $100,000 a year. You make $100,000 a year? Oh, you must be doing very well. Well, what do you make? I make $10 an hour. Oh, you make $10 an hour? Poor thing. He's probably not doing so well. So in my classes, like, should I go ahead and talk about it?
Yeah,
In one of my classes, I asked people, well, here's Bill who makes $100,000 a year, and here's Joe who makes $10 an hour. Who has more money in their pocket on a Friday night? And so then, the whole class stops and says, okay, well, this has to be a trick question. It has to be Joe, the guy who makes $10 an hour. But how is that possible? Because somebody who makes $100,000 a year, that's a lot of money. That's about $50 an hour. Somebody who makes $10 an hour, that's only like $20,000 a year. How can one have more money than the other? Who has more money in their pocket on a Friday night? So I get a lot of people to yell out things, but usually nobody really knows. Some people say, oh, it's the guy who makes less. But why? Well, I don't know. So then I said, the answer is, you do not have enough information to answer this question. All I told you was how much they make. I have not told you how much do they owe. What are their expenses? And then I go through and show. Bill, who makes $100,000 a year, has a house. And then I show the expensive mortgage and the utilities.
I have a list of all of Bill's expenses here. Let's see. So Bill's expenses, he has, we said a house,
a car. He has a student loan. He has credit card debt. And just to see, the chart's really good to show in a class because a lot of people say, oh, you have a house. What's the big deal? Well, with the house comes the mortgage, the homeowner's insurance, the real estate tax. Then you have the water bill, electric bill, gas bill, sewer bill, cable bill. I mean, there's a lot maintenance on the house. Well, even if your house is perfectly new, you still have all those bills that come in, all the utility bills. You have a car. You have auto insurance. You have excise tax. You have your car payment. And then I think I might have added student loan, life insurance, credit card debt. In the end, Bill had about, what, $400?
Yep, $425 left.
Okay. Now, Joe.
And he started, his monthly income was over almost $5,600.
Okay, he had $5,600, but after he owns a house, he has a car, all that, he left with $400. Now Joe makes $10 an hour, and his monthly income was what? $1,300. Okay. Well, he lives at home with his folks. He takes the T to work every day. He has a cell phone, and that's it. So he has a T-Pass and a cell phone. At the end of the month, he has what?
Almost $700.
So the guy who makes $10 an hour has more money in his pocket on a Friday night than the guy who makes $100,000 a year. Now, yes, you can compare. Well, the guy who makes $100,000 has more stuff, but we don't tend to look at that stuff. We just look at the income. Even when we're looking for jobs ourselves, we'll say, "Well, I want a job that makes $100,000 a year." Well, what are your expenses? Because you can end up in the end having less than somebody else who makes $10 an hour who has no expenses. And that's a real problem in our society, that we just look at income and we don't look at expenses in most people's situation. When we compare the success, a lot of people think someone who makes a lot of money must be more successful than somebody who doesn't make a lot of money. And it's not really what you make, it's what you owe that really determines how much income is coming into your house. You can't just look at income, you have to look at expenses.
Right, and the answer isn't necessarily rent instead of own. That's not necessarily the message that we're presenting here, but it's really that you need to look at the whole picture.
Oh, definitely.
That when we're talking about cash flow and what's left at the end of the day is that, what am I starting with, and what are all the things that my money is spent on? And really looking at both sides of that equation.
And I find a lot of people don't want to look at what do I spend my money on? They want to look at the money coming in, and they don't want to look at the money going out, and that's a real shame.
Right. Well, we said 21% of people who make over $100,000 are living paycheck to paycheck, which basically means, if you think about it, they're just like all of those other people who are making a lot less, because at the end of the day, they're not saving anything either.
No difference.
That's what's so crazy about all of this is the savings that's just not happening. And I think it is a real myth that a good salary equates to financial success or represents something or even means something about them. And so it's so important to be looking at. And it's interesting, I get calls all the time from potential clients who say, I had one that just called me a couple days ago. She said, I make $250,000, me alone, and then my husband makes another 100 or something. She said, I make a lot, but I spend a lot.
Yeah.
And she said, and I never seem to have enough.
Yep, absolutely.
And she's just not saving. And so that's very prevalent out there. So whatever we can do to at least start to inspire people, start to say, well, what's in it for me? If I can get the benefits that Karen is getting and that we're talking about, maybe it's worth it.
Yeah.